we've asked Michael to address and comment on some of these challenges and some of the policy response that we're seeing in conversations around some of these topics that are of top mind concern in the cattle industry now. So I'll turn the program now over to Michael Nepveaux. Michael?
So before going a little bit further, I do want to touch on some of the, Travis had mentioned, there's been a lot of proposals floating out there. We know the Grassley bill, the 5014. We know that there's been a renewed interest in mandatory cool. There's been more talk about another aid package coming through the program. There's even been some talk of a fed cattle set-aside program. To touch on a few of these, and keep in mind this is AFBF thoughts and policy, not necessarily Arkansas. They may have separate state policy on this, but when we're talking about the 5014 Grassley bill, what that bill is proposing is requiring a packer to purchase 50% of their weekly, I believe it's weekly, it might be daily, let's say 50% of their slaughter on the negotiated cash market. At the same time, they have to do it within 14 days of slaughter. Now, looking at where we are currently in the U.S., nationally, negotiated, that blue line is around 21, 22%. So that's a substantial change from where we currently stand. Now, AFBF, we have direct policy that would oppose this, so we don't support the bill. Our policy strongly is in favor of a producer being able to enter into whatever marketing contracts they see fit for their operation. And quite frankly, if only 20% of the country is currently operating under a negotiated cash market, if you're forcing 50% of it, then you're taking away the option for many producers to be able to operate in that. And that there's going to be less programs, less animals moving through those programs, and producers would not be able to operate in that. We also point out that the country is not that left graph. The country is many different states, many different regions that all operate differently. So, for example, you look at Texas, Oklahoma, and New Mexico, they're operating at a 80 to 90, 95% under formula contract. Very little is on that negotiated grid. Then you look at Kansas, Nebraska, they operate a little bit differently. Nebraska in particular has a larger share of negotiated than with a much smaller share of formula than some of those other regions of the country as well. I think, you know, we've had an issue with MPOOL getting revived. That's something that, you know, AFBF has not been in favor of for a long time. That argument's been hashed out. Additionally, we've been working with USDA and the CFTC. So another one that I'll mention as well is that you might have seen that USDA has been investigating the packers, looking into basically to make sure there is no bad faith behavior, no market manipulation. So there's actually a series of investigations going on. USDA opened an investigation into the Holcomb fire, which occurred last August, almost a year ago at this point. And they opened an investigation, and just about the time we thought that they would be wrapping up their investigation, COVID hit. So then they decided to roll the COVID investigation, the Tyson investigation, the Holcomb, Kansas fire, into the new COVID investigation. So that's why we haven't seen the results of the Holcomb one, is that it's part of the ongoing investigation, which hopefully we've seen some indication from USDA that we could be getting the results of that fairly soon. Now there's a separate call for an investigation through the Department of Justice. Now that would be separate from USDA. That would be something going in from actually, you saw President Trump talk about it as well. There's a letter from many state attorney generals where they're pushing for an investigation from DOJ. So that would be, we don't know really much on the status of that one. That, if it's moving forward, would be a separate situation than the USDA. Additionally, the CFTC, the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, has indicated and worked directly with us. I can assure you that Zippy Duvall, president of the American Farm Bureau Federation, has had many conversations with the chairman of the CFTC. He's also had many conversations with Sonny Perdue and the folks, Undersecretary Eyeball, the folks over there at USDA to make sure that they know where we stand on investigations, and that's something where we 100% support USDA looking into this. We want to make sure that we're not saying anybody had acted in bad faith, but we want to make sure that USDA is there making sure that everything was kosher, everything was okay, and that nobody acted inappropriately. So I think with that, Travis, I think I've gone as far as I was supposed to go. I know I spoke quick a little bit, but it was a lot of information to cover. So happy to see if there are any questions from you, or we're happy to, if anybody has any questions about the presentation. We work for you guys, we represent the members, and we're always willing to listen, so feel free to reach out.
Well, just a follow-up question, Michael. You mentioned the legislation been introduced on the price discovery topics. Any sense of when Congress might take some kind of action?
This is speculation on my part. Probably shouldn't do it, but I'm going to anyways. The 5014, Senator Grassley dropped that. Basically, we were already sitting in kind of a tough situation where mandatory price reporting has to be reauthorized by the end of September. And Senator Grassley dropped this bill. It's basically like a hand grenade dropping into the middle of that whole process. So there's no way, I think, that you can address mandatory price reporting without someone trying to work the Grassley bill into the conversation. So that conversation is going to be had to be had. You can see they may be able to work it out before reauthorization is due later on this fall. I think that'd be a pretty heavy lift for them. You might see a situation where they kind of, pass a temporary thing where we reauthorize until we can actually, fight about this and figure out what to do with it in the fall. I mean, right now with everything going on with COVID, it makes predicting a lot of this stuff very difficult, and it's a lot of uncertainty out there right now.
Well, I assume with an impending election that will slow congressional action some as well. Would you think? Yeah,
and that's a good point. I'm sorry I didn't mention that. We're what is it? It's July, so 3-4 months out from being in the middle of election season. I find it hard to believe that they'd have much of an appetite to go into any heavy legislation.
Okay. You mentioned cool. Any other follow-up? It's just been introduced. Is much discussion around it yet?
I don't know if there's been any real serious discussion around that. And to be honest, I don't handle trade issues as much. That's something that our trade folks, Dave and Veronica, would be better able to answer than myself. I can talk about, as far as the minimum negotiated trade, only one bill has been officially written up. There's also another proposal that had been floating around there saying 30% negotiated trade in 14 days. But the Grassley's 50% 14 is the only one that's actually been officially out there.
Okay, good. Well, we want to be mindful of your time, and we appreciate you spending time with us to give us a little perspective from your side and some of the policy implications here on some of these challenging issues during these challenging times. So we appreciate your input. Thank you very much, Michael.
Thank you very much for having me on, Travis.